Okay, hello, my dear students. Welcome to the second part of the chapter Trumpet of Swans of Literature for Standard 4. I am your very own Rahul Sir. In the previous part, we studied about Sam Beaver and how he was startled to see the nest of the trumpeter swans and what he did and why was the swan and the cob surprised because he had no gun. After watching the swan and the cob for around 1 hour, he left off. And the swan laid 4 different eggs, and finally, in the last line, she was gazing at her eggs proudly. Now, the next page. The swan settled herself in the nest to keep her eggs warm. My dear students, we must have studied this process about this process which is known as incubation in science. Basically, all animals except reptiles, they incubate. And why do they incubate? They basically incubate to keep their eggs warm. But reptiles don't incubate. Understood? Carefully, she reached down with her bill. Again, this bill is another word used for beak. Bill is another word used for bird's beak. Means the swan slowly and steadily came down to the land through her beak and poked each egg until it was in just the right spot to receive warmth from her body. As I told you, that the swan was incubating to make the swan basically was incubating in order to make her eggs warm. Understood? Now, the cob sailed around close by. During this time, the cob was sailing around, means it was paddling, he was paddling around to keep her company and protect her from enemies. Now the cob was paddling because of 2 reasons. The first reason was that it wanted to keep her company. And the second reason that it was paddling because to make her safe from different enemies. Now, he knew that a fox prowled somewhere in the woods. He had heard him barking on some nights because the cob heard a fox prowling around the bushes. And as we all know, that red fox is the enemy of the swan and the cob. Now, days passed and the swan sat in the nest. Means days kept on passing and the swan sat on the eggs to make her eggs warm, to give the warmth feeling to her eggs, means incubation. Warming the eggs. Through sun and rain, the weeks went by, no one disturbed her, means after many weeks passed, nobody disturbed them, nobody came to disturb them. Finally, one warm afternoon, tired of swimming around, the cob asked the swan, "Do you never get tired of sitting in one place?" Means when basically the cob was tired of paddling, one day he decided to ask some questions to the swan. And the first question which he asked is, he asked the swan that doesn't she get tired of sitting at one place for days and days? "No," replied the swan, "not really." The swan denied. She said no. "Isn't it uncomfortable to sit on eggs?" Again, the cow asked a question to the swan. That don't you feel uncomfortable to sit on the eggs in the same position for the whole day? "Yes, it is," replied the swan. "But I won't have to sit for long. Our cygnets will be born soon." Means The swan said that, of course, it is uncomfortable to sit on the eggs, but I don't have to sit for a very long time, because soon our cygnets, means baby of swan, will come out of the eggs. Now, don't you ever feel hungry or thirsty? Asked the cob. Yes, I do, said the swan. I am actually very thirsty right now. The swan wished to drink some water. The swan decided she could safely leave the eggs for a few minutes. Means, she said the cob that she is feeling thirsty, and finally she decided to leave the eggs for a few minutes safely. She pushed some loose feathers around the eggs to hide them and keep them warm. Means, after hiding the eggs properly so that they can work for two different purposes, also the eggs will be hidden and they will get the warmth, the swan finally decided to get into the pond and drink some fresh water. Then she stepped off the nest and entered the water to take several quick sips. She started drinking water. She glided over to a shallow place, thrust her head underwater, and pulled up tender greens. Greens means green leaves from the bottom. Finally, she waddled out onto a grassy bank and stood there preening her feathers. Preening is again a scientific term which is used for cleaning. So, after she drank fresh water from the pond, she came out to the land and she was preening her feathers. She was cleaning her feathers. She felt good, but she had no idea that at that moment their enemy, the red fox, stood waiting behind a clump of bushes. My God! While she was cleaning her feathers, she was feeling comfortable. During that very time, their enemy, the red fox, somehow came out of the clump of bushes, and he was looking at the swan furiously. The cob spied the fox first, means saw the fox first. Who saw the fox first? The answer will be the cob saw the fox first. Look out! He trumpeted. I can see the fox creeping towards you. You are in grave danger. Means the cob warned the swan and said that, my dear swan, you are in great danger now, because the fox is prowling towards you, jumping towards you now. But just as the fox was about to spring on the swan, a stick came hurtling through the air, surprising everybody. Means, the very moment when the fox was prowling towards the swan to attack her, at that very moment, a stick came flying towards the fox and hurted him, and everybody was surprised to see that stick. It struck the fox on the nose as he yelped in pain while turning around to run away. The stick finally struck the fox's nose and he shouted, he yelled out in pain, and he ran out. The two birds could not imagine what had happened. They were not able to, basically, the swan was saved, but they couldn't think about where did the stick came and who saved her from the red fox. To know this, please watch my third video. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.